up their first victory of the split here.
Yep.
Now, granted, they still need one more to take the series over Apex, but they did this in much more commanding fashion. We saw the gold lead quite significant, much shorter game above all else. And, you know, a lot of it coming off of split pushing from Darshan.
Yeah, he had a monster game, and I think this is one of the few times where we really got to see the power of Rift Herald. And I think that's one of the biggest things for me was, you know, we've been talking earlier about how, is this really that strong of a buff, or is it this kind of thing where people just grab it when they're winning and then it looks like it's really strong statistically. But I think here we saw the power where it enabled him to kind of take over the game.
Right. Of course, they did have a small lead in securing that Rift Herald.
Right.
But we did very soon after follow him through the top lane, solo pushing an inhib turret down. Then, of course, not too long after that, while Apex had their focus around the Baron and the top lane fights, he did the same exact thing, split pushing an inhib down in the bottom lane. So just 9 turrets to 1 at one point in that game, definitely opening up that gold lead, just kind of putting him in a position where, again, we could take bad fights at this point. Our gold lead is so large, it's not going to matter. We saw Apex do the best they could with the Baron buff, as they did take 2 turrets in the mid lane. But that's where I want to jump into our replay. 29 minutes into the game, Apex kind of going a little, they're looking for a little bit too much off of this Baron, realizing how much they had lost. Xpecial going in for this engage, ill-advised.
Yeah, what they're thinking probably is like, we're against a split push team, we have this Baron buff, our inhib's down, they're going to keep splitting, so we need to make a very big play now, because if we don't get enough off this Baron, it's over. And so they try and force this dive, it doesn't quite work. Stixxay mans up and goes really far on the back line there, almost gets taken out by the Kassadin, but actually cleans up both carries by himself before HuHi finishes off the Ray, trying to sneakily get out of there. And then Darshan makes the smart play, just TP to, you're already pushing super creep wave, and they're able to, you know.
Yeah, of course, we saw that fight, the 4-for-0, and we're like, they've already got supers pushing the bot lane. This is the end of the game, without realizing how short the death timers were. It was only 29 minutes of the game.
Yeah, I thought it was done.
Exactly. We're like, oh, this game's over. We're getting ready to do the Analyst same. And, of course, Apex able to save the base, at least for a little while longer, but not before 3 of their inhibs go down. And then it's an easy second push into the base from CLG. You know, with all of that in mind, then Apex, as you see here on your screen, they're going to be gearing up for game 3. That's really what I want to focus on, is this third game of the series, because game 1, super back and forth. Both of these teams had opportunities to win. Game 2, CLG very commanding in their victory, so perhaps a little boost to the morale for them as they finally did get their first win. We'll see if they come back just as strong in game 3, or if Apex has an answer.
Yeah, I think this was a very interesting draft when you look at it, and you know, CLG is clearly looking to go for this kind of split push style, and Apex tries to answer with their own very aggressive kind of split push answer. And Kassadin, who is someone who can roam around the map very well, and he's going to try and collapse on these split pushers. And the strategy didn't quite work out. And so when you're Apex and you're breaking down, what should we do next game? You need to look very closely, like, was the strategy, are we not quite comfortable with this? Is it not a good strategy? Because Kassadin is a fringe pick. And so maybe they need to reevaluate that and look to go for more of like a standard team fight, standard comp, go back to something like that. Or if CLG does go for the split push again, do you try and answer it the same way?
Yeah, of course, they do find themselves on the blue side
right,
in the
that's
following
a
game,
too.
so that, you know, whether or not that helps them or not, because that will allow HuHi to have that counter pick. You know, so if they are looking for another TF pickup, it will depend on what Apex decides to lock in. You see here Zix right now going over with the team, their strategies moving into game 3. And of course, Xmithie getting a little refueling action in there with the bagels. Gotta be well fed in order to perform in League of Legends. Of course, now I do want to move on to our player of the game. Gonna go to HuHi, 6, 3, and 5 as Twisted Fate with 18k damage. So we talk about Darshan being a solid split pusher. That can only happen, of course, if the other 4-man squad can put pressure on the map, can win those 4v4s and even sometimes 4v5s to give Darshan that time.
Right, and that's kind of how TF functions. It's very different from like, oh, he's a standard mid laner, and our split push is 4-1. We have a wave clear mid, you know, just clearing waves while a split pusher does work. TF is a lot more active in that split push. He can come collapse as well if someone tries to collapse on you. He can also split somewhere else. So there were times where he was pushing up mid lane as Darshan's taking bot lane, as Apex is taking Baron, and there's this crazy amount of map movement going on, and he has to pick between TPing to Baron to cancel recalls for Darshan or go join Darshan, and he made a lot of really intelligent decisions throughout that game.
And I think above all else, that's going to feel really good for HuHi, because in their losses, both against TSM as well as in the previous game against Apex, we have pointed to him as being somewhat of an underperformer here early in the split. expectations are higher of him at this point, especially, you know, across the roster for CLG. We have high expectations for them coming back from MSI. So getting that player of the game under his belt, having that solid performance on TF will hopefully rather open him up to a little bit more of aggressive play and comfortable play moving into game 3.
Yep, and I think that's not to, you know, kind of make up for CLG's slight underperformance. There is this very real hangover effect that not only is it present in League of Legends, but present in traditional sports as well. And we've seen SKT, after winning a world championship, lose some small tournament to an amateur team. And for CLG to come back, everyone else is more rested, more practiced than them. I think it's okay for fans to like temper their expectations a little bit. But they still have one more game to go in this series.
Exactly that. The teams have a little bit more time to prep for that third game of the day. APX coming out very strong in the game 1. CLG slapping them down in game 2. It's time now for a brief break, though, but we won't be long. Stay tuned for game 3 between APX and Counterlogic Gaming right after this.